Hi everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today, we are going to explore the life and legacy of one of Africa's most intriguing and influential leaders, Joseph Kabila Kabange. For nearly 2 decades, Kabila was the president of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, a country that has seen both extraordinary challenges and significant progress under his leadership. But who is Joseph Kabila, and what makes his story so compelling? Let's dive deep into his life, from his early years to his lasting impact on Congo and Africa as a whole. Joseph Kabila was born on June 4, 1971, in the remote village of Huabora in the Fizi territory, located in the eastern part of what was then known as Zaire. This region, part of today's South Kivu province, is rugged, mountainous, and often isolated from the rest of the country. Growing up in such an environment, Kabila was exposed early on to the harsh realities of life in one of the most challenging parts of Africa. Joseph Kabila's father, Laurent-Désiré Kabila, was a revolutionary figure who led a successful rebellion against the longtime dictator Mobutu Sese Seko. Laurent Kabila's forces, known as the Alliance of Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Congo, AFDL, marched across Zaire in 1996 to 1997, overthrowing Mobutu's regime and renaming the country the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Laurent Kabila's victory was seen as a major turning point in African politics, ending over 30 years of Mobutu's kleptocratic rule. However, life for Joseph Kabila was anything but ordinary. He was thrust into a world of military campaigns, political intrigue, and power struggles from a young age. He received his early education in Tanzania and Uganda, where his father spent much of his time during his revolutionary years. In these foreign lands, Joseph not only learned academic subjects but also absorbed the art of war and guerrilla tactics, which would later become crucial to his own leadership. By the time Joseph Kabila was a teenager, he had already joined his father's rebel forces. His training was rigorous, combining both military and political education, preparing him for a future role that neither he nor anyone else could have predicted at the time. The story of Joseph Kabila's rise to power is one of sudden and dramatic change. On January 16, 2001, tragedy struck the Democratic Republic of the Congo when President Laurent-Désiré Kabila was assassinated in his own palace by one of his bodyguards. The assassination shocked the nation and the world. The DRC was already in the midst of the Second Congo War, a conflict so devastating that it's often referred to as the African World War, involving multiple nations and resulting in millions of deaths. At just 29 years old, Joseph Kabila was thrust into the presidency of a country in chaos. Many were skeptical of his ability to lead. He was young, relatively inexperienced, and facing enormous pressure from both internal factions and international forces. The DRC was fractured by war, with various rebel groups controlling large parts of the country. Neighboring nations were heavily involved, backing different factions to secure their own interests in the region. Despite the overwhelming challenges, Joseph Kabila took on the mantle of leadership with a calm and measured approach. His first and most pressing task was to stabilize the country and bring an end to the war. Kabila quickly moved to engage in diplomatic negotiations with rebel leaders and neighboring countries. His efforts culminated in the signing of the Pretoria Accord in 2002, which marked the official end of the Second Congo War. This peace agreement was a significant achievement, leading to the withdrawal of foreign troops and the establishment of a transitional government that included representatives from various rebel factions. Kabila's ability to negotiate peace at such a young age earned him respect both within the DRC and internationally. However, the end of the war did not mean an end to the challenges. The country was in ruins, with a devastated infrastructure, a shattered economy, and millions of displaced people. Kabila had inherited a nation in desperate need of rebuilding. As president, Joseph Kabila faced the daunting task of leading a country through a period of reconstruction and healing. One of his major achievements was overseeing the organization of the DRC's first multiparty elections in over 4 decades. These elections, held in 2006, were a critical moment in the DRC's path toward democracy. The process was far from easy, with logistical challenges, security concerns, and political tensions running high. Despite these obstacles, the elections were held, and Joseph Kabila emerged victorious in a runoff vote against his main challenger, Jean-Pierre Bemba. The 2006 elections were hailed as a significant step forward for democracy in the DRC, even though they were not without controversy. Kabila's victory was seen as a mandate to continue his efforts to rebuild the country and move toward greater stability. Kabila's second term as president, which began in 2006, was marked by a mix of progress and persistent challenges. On the positive side, his government focused on infrastructure development, aiming to rebuild the country's roads, hospitals, schools, and other essential services that had been destroyed during the war. The DRC is a country rich in natural resources, particularly in minerals like cobalt, copper, and diamonds. Kabila sought to leverage these resources to attract foreign investment and spur economic growth. Under Kabila's leadership, the DRC experienced some economic improvements, particularly in the mining sector. Foreign companies were encouraged to invest in the country's vast mineral wealth, leading to an increase in exports and government revenues. However, this economic growth was unevenly distributed, and much of the population continued to live in poverty. The exploitation of natural resources also led to environmental degradation and sparked conflicts over land and resources, particularly in the eastern regions of the country. Another significant challenge during Kabila's presidency was the ongoing conflict in the eastern DRC. Despite the official end of the Second Congo War, violence persisted in regions like North Kivu, South Kivu, and Ituri, where various armed groups continued to operate. These groups often fought over control of mineral-rich areas, leading to displacement and suffering for millions of civilians. Kabila's government struggled to fully contain these conflicts, and the eastern DRC remained one of the most volatile regions in the world. In terms of governance, Kabila's administration faced widespread criticism for corruption, lack of transparency, and human rights abuses. The DRC's government institutions were often described as weak and ineffective, with corruption deeply entrenched at all levels. International observers frequently raised concerns about the conduct of Kabila's government, particularly in relation to freedom of the press, political repression, and the treatment of opposition figures. The Democratic Republic of the Congo is often described as a paradox, a country blessed with incredible natural wealth yet plagued by poverty and underdevelopment. Joseph Kabila's presidency focused heavily on trying to bridge this gap by developing the DRC's economy, particularly through the exploitation of its mineral resources. The DRC is home to some of the world's largest deposits of cobalt, copper, diamonds, gold, and other valuable minerals. Cobalt, in particular, is essential for the production of batteries used in electric vehicles, making the DRC a key player in the global supply chain for this critical resource. Under Kabila's leadership, the government signed deals with foreign mining companies, hoping to attract investment and boost the economy. However, the benefits of these investments were often unevenly distributed. While the mining sector did bring in significant revenue, much of it did not reach the average Congolese citizen. Corruption within the government and the mining industry meant that profits were frequently siphoned off by elites, leaving little for public services or infrastructure development. One of Kabila's major economic initiatives was the Five Pillars program, launched in 2006. This program aimed to rebuild the country's infrastructure, particularly roads, energy, health, education, and water supply. The goal was to create a foundation for sustainable development that could lift millions of Congolese out of poverty. While there were some successes, such as the construction of new roads and the rehabilitation of power plants, progress was often slow and hampered by inefficiency and corruption. Kinshasa, the capital city, saw significant development during Kabila's presidency. The city's skyline began to change with new buildings, hotels, and infrastructure projects aimed at modernizing the capital. However, outside of Kinshasa, many regions of the DRC remained underdeveloped, with limited access to basic services such as clean water, healthcare, and education. Kabila's economic policies also faced criticism for their environmental impact. The expansion of mining operations often led to deforestation, pollution, and the displacement of local communities. In the eastern regions of the DRC, where many of these mining activities took place, armed groups continued to exploit the local population, leading to ongoing human rights abuses and instability. As Joseph Kabila's second term neared its end in 2016, his presidency became increasingly controversial. According to the DRC's constitution, Kabila was limited to 2 terms in office, meaning he was supposed to step down after the 2016 elections. However, these elections were repeatedly delayed, with the government citing logistical and financial difficulties as the primary reasons. The delays sparked widespread protests across the country, with many Congolese citizens accusing Kabila of trying to cling to power. The situation grew increasingly tense as opposition leaders, civil society groups, and international observers called for Kabila to respect the constitution and hold the elections as scheduled. In December 2016, Kabila announced that he would remain in office until a new president was elected, further fueling accusations of authoritarianism. The delayed elections led to a political crisis in the DRC, with violent clashes between protesters and security forces resulting in numerous deaths and injuries. The international community, including the United Nations and the African Union, expressed concern over the situation and called for a peaceful resolution. The pressure on Kabila's government continued to mount, both from within the country and abroad. In the face of growing unrest, Kabila eventually agreed to a power-sharing deal with the opposition in December 2016, known as the Saint Sylvester Agreement. This agreement called for elections to be held by the end of 2017 and included provisions for a transitional government. However, the elections were once again delayed, this time to December 2018, further deepening the political crisis. Kabila's decision to delay the elections and remain in power beyond his constitutional term limit significantly tarnished his legacy. While he had been praised for his earlier efforts to bring peace and stability to the DRC, his actions in the final years of his presidency led to widespread criticism and accusations of undermining democracy in the country. Despite the controversies, Kabila did not seek a third term in the 2018 elections. Instead, he supported Emmanuel Ramazani Shadary, a loyalist from his party, as his successor. However, Shadary was defeated by opposition leader Felix Tshisekedi, marking the first peaceful transfer of power in the DRC's history. Kabila's decision to step down and allow the election results to stand, despite the contested outcome, was seen as a positive step for the country's democracy. On January 24, 2019, Felix Tshisekedi was inaugurated as the President of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, succeeding Joseph Kabila. The transition of power was significant not only for the DRC but also for Africa as a whole, as it marked the first time in the country's history that power was peacefully transferred from one elected leader to another. While Kabila stepped down as president, his influence in Congolese politics did not end. As a former president, Kabila was granted the title of Senator for Life, giving him a permanent seat in the country's Senate. Additionally, Kabila remained a powerful figure within the ruling coalition, the Common Front for Congo, FCC, which held a majority in the National Assembly and controlled many key government positions. Kabila's legacy is a complex and multifaceted one. On one hand, he is credited with bringing an end to the Second Congo War, stabilizing the country, and overseeing its first democratic elections in decades. His leadership during the early years of his presidency helped prevent the disintegration of the DRC and laid the groundwork for rebuilding a nation that had been ravaged by conflict. On the other hand, Kabila's presidency was marred by allegations of corruption, human rights abuses, and political repression. The delayed elections and his government's handling of the political crisis in the final years of his term left a stain on his record, raising questions about his commitment to democracy and the rule of law.
Kabila's impact on the DRC's economy and infrastructure is also mixed. While his administration made efforts to attract foreign investment and rebuild the country's infrastructure, much of the population continued to live in poverty, and the benefits of economic growth were not evenly distributed. The ongoing conflict in the eastern DRC and the exploitation of natural resources remained major challenges throughout his presidency. Looking forward, Joseph Kabila's role in the future of the DRC remains uncertain. As a senator for life and a key figure in the FCC, he continues to wield significant influence over Congolese politics. Whether he will choose to remain a behind-the-scenes power broker or attempt to return to the presidency in the future is a question that only time will answer. So, who is Joseph Kabila Kabange? He's a leader who came to power in the midst of one of the most challenging periods in the Democratic Republic of the Congo's history. Over nearly 2 decades, he guided the country through war, peace, development, and controversy. While his legacy is debated, there's no doubt that Joseph Kabila's impact on the DRC and Africa as a whole will be remembered for years to come. If you found this video interesting, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment with your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more in-depth stories about Africa's leaders, history, and politics. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.